It's me, Mario!
What's up, guys? I'm Sean Rader, and welcome to the Ultimate Emulator Setup Guide for Super Mario 64 speedruns. The standard platform for high-level runs is N64. Pretty much every top runner uses one. However, tons and tons of runners still use Emulator because of how easy it is to access and for the plethora of resources you get for free. Emulator is definitely my recommended platform for a new player. The practice tools you get access to make it 10 times easier to learn, and I'll teach you how to set them all up and more in this guide. If you guys want to learn more about SM64 speedruns, I've got a ton of other guides on my channel. I'll link the full playlist in the description. Now let's get into it. The SM64 leaderboard has very specific rules on emulator usage. Only version 1.6 of the Project 64 emulator is allowed, with a couple others being allowed for Mac and Linux computers. For this guide, I'm going to assume you have a Windows computer. Head down to the description of this video and download Project 64 1.6. Just as a side note, all resources I mentioned in this video will be down there. Run the install wizard you just downloaded. Now choose where you want your emulator's folder to end up. It's important to keep in mind where this is. Finish up and tick the box here to open the emulator immediately. Next we'll need a ROM file, which is basically the game file that the emulator runs. Distributing these is illegal, so I can't put it in the description. On a completely separate note though, you guys should join my Discord server. It has a download section with a bunch of perfectly legal stuff in it. Anyway, however you choose to get the ROM, put it in a folder somewhere on its own. Next we're going to download the Usamune Practice ROM, which is a modified version of SM64 that's optimized for practicing speedrun strats. Right-click on the .zip file and extract it, provided you have an extraction software like WinRAR. Because of the legality issue, the download link in the description just gives you a patcher, which you need to use with the SM64 ROM we downloaded a second ago. To do this, open the folder corresponding to the ROM version you have. Use the one marked U for an English ROM and the one marked J for a Japanese ROM. Copy your SM64 ROM into this folder, then drag and drop it onto patch.cmd. This should pop out another ROM in the same folder called SM64 Usamune v something, which you should put in your original ROMs folder. That's all the downloads we need. Now go back to your emulator. Under the File menu, click Choose ROM Directory and select the folder you put both your ROMs in. This should bring up two game options, but one or both of them will likely be named Bad ROM, Use Good N64, blah blah blah. Let's fix that. Under the Options menu, click Settings. Go to the Options tab, then uncheck Hide Advanced Settings and click OK. Go back into Settings, then go to ROM Selection. Click on the top thing in the right box, then spam click Remove. Then go over to the left box, click File Name, then click Add. Press OK and the menu should have readable names for the games. We also need to change a few settings to get the ROMs to run properly. Click Options, then Settings again and go to the Advanced tab. Set the default memory size to 8, then press OK. This is required to get certain ROMs to run, like Usamune. Next, right-click on both games in the main menu and click Edit Game Settings, setting the counter factor to 1. This eliminates basically all lag in the entire game, whereas normally the game stutters awfully in stages like DDD. Next, click Options then Settings again to go to the Plugins tab. There are 3 different types of plugins: Video, Audio, and Input. The defaults here work decently, but there are generally much better options you can download for all 3. Download the Video, Audio, and Input plugins from the description. Navigate to your Project 64 folder I told you to keep in mind earlier and find the plugins folder. Put all 3 of the plugins you downloaded in here. You'll need to extract the input and audio plugins, but you only need the .dll files. You'll also need to hit replace for the input plugin, as we're downloading a later version of the default one. Go back to the emulator settings and set the plugins to the ones we just downloaded. Glide N64, Shunyuan's HLE Audio, and NRage's Direct Input 8. Click OK, then boot up either game so we can test our plugin settings while we change them. Go to Options, then Configure Graphics Plugin. Make sure you go to the Frame Buffer tab and uncheck Emulate Frame Buffer, because otherwise you'll have a bunch of input lag. Go back to the first tab. Pretty much everyone plays on windowed mode because this emulator is really buggy in full screen. Change your windowed resolution to something that fits on your screen. The audio plugin should be fine as is, but if the sound isn't playing, you may need to change your output device. You can also change the volume here if you don't want to use the Windows volume mixer. Finally, we have to set our controls. Go to the Devices tab and select the controller you'll be using in the dropdown. You can leave it as none if you're using keyboard. Go back to Controls and set everything the way you want it. Most of the time, I recommend unchecking Real N64 range and setting the range to 100% here, but it can differ for different controllers. If you find you're having a hard time tiptoeing in-game, you might need to lower this range. Hit save, and congrats! You should be able to play either ROM at full efficiency. If you get stuck at any point in this walkthrough, try closing the emulator and reopening it. That tends to fix a lot of problems. If all else fails, feel free to ask me for help in my Discord server. I'm extremely active there and more than happy to assist. Even though this doesn't really fit in a video like this, I want to quickly give a couple tips on how to use Usamune, because you should definitely be using it. Any other method of practice is vastly inferior to taking advantage of this tool. After opening it, select a file. Then press D-pad down to open the Usamune menu. Pressing L or R switches between the settings menu and the level select. Use the D-pad to navigate and press A to select any level you want to practice. There are also a couple settings you should change. Go back to the settings menu. Press D-pad right to go into the timer settings. Use the C left and C right buttons to change individual settings. Set stop to XCAM and display to always. This will time your individual star attempts so you can tell if you're improving as you practice. Scroll down to the reset settings, changing L button to L reset. This will let you go back to the start of a level by pressing L, which is probably the most important thing to have while practicing. Scroll down to load button and set it to D up. This will allow you to load your states by pressing D-pad up. The CX4 option will only work if you press all 4 C buttons at the same time, which is impossible unless you're using an N64 controller. You set the states by pausing and unpausing, then press D-pad up to load that state. Scroll down to data and set 120 file to on, giving yourself all 120 stars and allowing you to select any star. I also like to scroll down to MISC and set my music to off. My typical practice regimen is using the level select to select a star I need to practice. I go through the initial movement, using the L button to level reset if I want to repeat it. If the star has difficult movement midway through, I'll pause and unpause to save a state, then use D-pad up to load it to repeatedly practice that section. If I'm in a stage with different states like Wet Dry World with its different water levels, or Tick-Tock Clock with its different speeds, I'll go into the spawn menu and set that manually for certain stars. Thanks for watching, guys. Again, if you have any issues, feel free to ask in the comments or in my Discord. I'll read everything you guys post. While you're here, dropping a like or a sub would really help support me to make more guides like this. Thanks again.